Hi there, it's time for the Commodore 64 compilation review, and this compilation was chosen by my channel members. This is actually the third members choice video in a row. I didn't really plan it that way, but that's how it's turned out. Anyway, I asked them to pick from 3 different Codemasters budget compilations, and they chose, as you can see on the screen, with a vote share of 50%, Quattro Super Hits. Here's Quattro Super Hits. It's got 4 games on, as usual, as a Quattro compilation would have. It was originally released in 1991 and it cost just £2.99, so 4 games for £3 should be a bargain. It will depend, of course, on the quality of those games. So let's take a look at the compilation in more detail and find out if any of these games really were super. The packaging for this compilation is very much like all the other Quattro compilations. I've looked at several of them in this series already. So you've got the yellow diamond in the middle that says Quattro Super Hits, big number 4 over it. And then you've got the cover art from the original releases of the 4 games. All 4 games on this one contain the word Super, hence the title of the compilation, I guess. So we've got Super Stuntman, Super Tank, Super Hero and KGB Super Spy. And then on the spine, it just says Quattro and Super Hits on this one. You do get a little bit of variety between the different Quattro compilations in this respect. The writing, the sort of filling of the word Quattro and the writing of the other text on the spine does vary from one to another. And on the back, we've got 4 screenshots of the 4 games, and none of those, as far as I can make out, are Commodore 64 screenshots, possibly that bottom one there, but I don't think so. I think they're all from other systems. There's some, as with most Codemasters compilations or releases, some superlatives about the game. So you can see an 80% rating from Your Sinclair for Super Stuntman, 82% from Your Sinclair for Super Tank Simulator, and then 2 that don't have any reviews, so probably aren't very good. These are then written probably by David Darling. Incredible 3D action, a must for any serious games player for Superhero, and Undercover Agent action, fast, smooth, playable, brilliant in uppercase. That's got David Darling's sort of marketing style all over it, that has. So there you go, that's the outside of the packaging. Let's now take a look inside. Here is the cassette for the compilation, and again it's very similar to all the other Quattro ones. It's got the name of the compilation and 2 of the games on each side, printed directly onto a black cassette. And as again with a lot of these compilations, for some reason the order of the games on the tape is completely different to the order of the games on the front cover. So you've got Super Tank and Super Hero on one side, Super Stuntman and KGB Spy on the other, which is different to what was on the cover there. Anyway, let's move on to the inlay. You do get a write-up of the 4 games there, again with the usual marketing style of Codemasters, making them all out to be brilliant, of course, absolutely brilliant. There's some adverts for some other Quattro compilations there, Combat and Adventure, and then you get to the instructions, which are done in multiple languages. So there's not a lot of information here. You've got the loading instructions, you then got sort of overview for Super Stuntman, which has just got a paragraph, lots of stuff done in bold text. Again, that's the style of Codemasters releases, and the controls. Same for Super Tank. KGB Super Spy, a little bit more information about the gameplay there, or the backstory, and also the controls again. And finally Superhero, which is more of an adventure game, has got a little bit more information, although not a huge amount. And again, real overload of bold uppercase text there that's just completely unnecessary. That is the style of Codemasters releases. As I said, you then got the instructions in Italian, and I think that's it actually, just in Italian for some reason. Some information about helplines that you could contact for help with certain games, and also the credits for the 4 games, obviously C64 related for this particular inlay. So there you go, that's the inlay. There's no adverts for this game that I could find in the gaming press of years gone by. Codemasters, you know, it's a £3 compilation. Why would you advertise it? It'll advertise itself in the shops and things like that. So straight on to the first game. First up on this compilation is Super Stuntman, originally released by Codemasters in 1988. As Super Stuntman, you must fight your way through fires, explosions, cannonballs and more to complete each scene. All the while, the bad guys try to barge you into the blazing fires. There are 7 scenes and each presents a different challenge, including the deadly car chase through the boulder-strewn desert, ultra-fast powerboat racing, weaving your way through trees in the forest at breakneck speed, using turbo boost to jump the Grand Canyon, battling it out with violent street gangs at midnight on the streets of New York, and much more. In each scene you get 3 takes, so can crash twice and get a bonus for showing amazing action. If you crash a 3rd time though, the game will be over. Hitting the rocks doesn't harm you, and when you blow up other cars and boats you'll get extra points for showing more action. This one has good presentation, with a smart title screen that has a reasonable David Whittaker SID tune, a high score table and several options including joystick or keyboard control. The in-game graphics are okay, with simple but well drawn backgrounds, though the sprites are fairly crude. There is some variety between stages too, with land and sea environments from what I saw, and there may be others later on based on the game description. You get basic sound effects for the vehicle's engine noise and gunshots, plus a couple of jingles when you lose a life or finish a level. The scrolling is smooth, but control of your vehicle is really awkward as it slides all over the place. The most annoying aspect is there are loads of dead ends that kill time if you go into them, as you have to reverse back out and change direction. Sometimes your vehicle gets stuck in the landscape too, which just suggests bad coding or level design. You can earn points for shooting enemies, but on the first stage especially, I saw a lot of them explode randomly as they spawn and then immediately hit a landscape object, which again just suggests poor design. Hitting an enemy explosion stops you dead, which can also be annoying. It is good that you get 3 takes or lives per stage, as that means there's no risk of losing your last life on a newly reached level. When you do lose a life, you usually get a bonus for a spectacular crash, so there is an element of risk reward, as you might want to try and maximise points by losing lives on a level that you know you can complete safely. The downside there is that when you do lose a life, there are slow intermission screens that you don't seem to be able to skip, which also appear between stages. Once you've played the game a few times and learned the level layouts, it's relatively easy to beat them as long as you take it carefully. If you mastered all 7 levels, then you would be able to complete the game in about 7 minutes, so there's not much longevity here beyond learning the level layouts. The game is playable to some extent, but it's not actually very enjoyable. You barely feel in control of the action, and the dead ends and other niggles don't really help. The concept is good and the variety in levels is admirable, but overall it's just an average budget game. Next up we have Super Tank, or Super Tank Simulator as it's known in-game. This was originally released by Codemasters on the C64 in 1990. You find yourself in the driving seat of NATO's latest and most sophisticated tank. Heavily armed and with tungsten reinforced armour, your mission is to fight through 8 deadly battle zones, but a hail of lethal enemy fire rains down on you from every direction. Each zone consists of 2 phases. You'll begin in an overhead view vertically scrolling area, where you must eliminate enemy tanks and gun emplacements. Once you reach the end of these stages, you'll find yourself sitting inside the tank with a first person view, and must train your gun sights on enemy snipers, choppers, jeeps, and of course tanks. You must reach the exit of each war zone at the end, only to be thrown headlong into another challenge. This game has a pretty simple title screen, but it does have a high score table, though I never got a high enough score to actually get on it. There's also a good tune in the background, though it is reused from another Codemasters game, SAS Combat Simulator. Graphics are a mixed bag. The player and enemy sprites are okay, with nice animation on the tank tracks, but the background graphics on the overhead view stages are quite ugly, especially the Cyan City level. The first person view stages are quite nice though, with some big enemy sprites and fair backgrounds. The in-game sound effects are very simple gunshot and explosion noises, and there's no music. The rotational controls for your tank are quite hard to get used to begin with, and to be honest it would be easier if you just moved in the direction you pushed the joystick, but I do appreciate the effort made by the programmer to implement true tank style movement. They do get easier to use the more you play, but it can be panic inducing trying to point in the right direction to shoot enemies. The best approach for the top down stage is to slowly move up the screen and try to shoot the turrets before they come on screen and start shooting at you. Of course, you can only learn this through replaying the levels over and over again. You can rebound shots against walls in some spots, which can be useful, and there are a variety of power-ups that can also help, which are reasonably well placed and fairly frequent. Once you get through an overhead view stage, you move on to an Operation Wolf inspired side-scrolling first-person view one. You just have to destroy all the enemies to progress, but these are quite difficult until you learn what's going to materialise where. The game is pretty stingy with both scoring and lives, and it's very easy to lose them on that second phase if you're not quick enough to eliminate the enemies. Progression in the game is basically just a case of taking it slow on the first phase, and then a memory test on the second. It's not especially nice looking, but it's a reasonably playable run and gunner if you can get to grips with the controls and persist with it. It's that time again where I say thank you to all my channel members, whose names you can see here in my Supporters Hall of Fame. If you're enjoying this video and would like to join these fine folks and support my efforts, why not become a member yourself? For a monthly fee starting from just 99p, you can get access to the special membership perks shown on screen, and more besides. If you're interested, then please click on the join button below this video for more information. If you're not able to commit to a monthly contribution but would still like to support my channel, then you could also give a super thanks. This one-off donation gives you a highlighted comment on whichever video you choose to click the button on, and anyone doing this will also get a shout out from me on a subsequent video. The super thanks button can be found below every video I produce. The third game on the compilation is Superhero, originally released in 1988. Fate has cast you in the role of an immortal, a superhero. To break the long monotonous days, the gods and superheroes have taken to giving each other complex puzzles to solve. Today it's your turn to play the game, and for the very highest stakes. You must perform well, for all the other deities are watching you from above, ready to strip you of your immortality and status if you fail in your quest. Luckily, Venus, the goddess of love, feels sympathetic and has hidden some useful objects in some of the rooms. Find these and your task will become much easier, as they'll endow you with supernatural powers. The power boots will enable you to jump. The returning warhammer allows you to slay the myriad monsters and ghouls in the corridors. A trans-dimensional bag nullifies the mass and size of an object, allowing you to carry it easily, and a mystical helmet destines you to be showered with gifts from the watching gods. The aim of the game is to vanquish the 5 evil guardians, which will block your way in the corridors. These can only be defeated by capturing their spirits, which are hidden in rooms in the complex. Every time you capture a guardian's spirit, you'll be thrown into the dead zone, and if you survive this, you'll be awarded a bonus life. The graphics in this game were designed for the original Amstrad version by Bernie Drummond, most famous for Head Over Heels, and to be fair, you can tell. The scenery on the walls of the rooms is really detailed, and there's some lovely cute cartoonish enemies reminiscent of the Ocean classic. Sadly, in the C64 version they look a bit squashed to fit the machine's lower resolution, and the colours are very bland on most screens. Sound-wise, there are minimal in-game effects, but a short tune is played when you lose a life. Something you'll be doing a lot of, by the way. There's also a nice though short tune on the title screen, which is otherwise just basic text. The other noteworthy thing presentation-wise is a detailed status screen when you're paused in-game, which does display a score, and yet no high score is retained as far as I could make out. I've reviewed quite a few of these isometric adventure games now, especially budget-priced ones, and you probably know my general feelings on them. Every time I play a new one, I keep hoping it'll impress me in some way, but this isn't going to be the one that changed my mind about this style of game. The problems start early with Superhero. Presumably a symptom of being converted from the Amstrad, the play area is actually wider than the visible screen, so you can walk off it and actually get stuck on platforms in the left and right corners, not knowing which way to move. The plain black floor on most screens means you can't judge whether platforms and enemies are actually on the floor or hovering above it. If that wasn't bad enough, it seems that all non-black floors will kill you, something you can only learn through trial and error. There are also some static objects that would typically form borders of a maze that are lethal to the touch, and it's very difficult to judge whether you're going to walk into them when you're having to deal with the isometric view. That problem also comes into play with many screens that feature the dreaded randomly spawning enemies. It's really hard to judge whether you're in line with them to shoot them, and they move fast and erratically so can quickly kill you. Your character only seems to be able to either jump or shoot on a given screen, not both, and yet there are often enemies and platforms, so it means you can either jump on a platform or kill an enemy if you're lucky, but doing both seems impossible. I wondered if there's a control to switch between jumping and shooting, but the instructions didn't mention one. I'm not even sure why the game is called Superhero when the character, items and plot are clearly more fantasy or mythology based. I don't know, maybe the hero is supposed to be Thor? Anyway, whatever the name, it didn't take me long to get frustrated and give up. This has all the usual problems of these games, which are just exacerbated by bad design of the environment, enemies and controls. I have no doubt it looked good and played better on the system it originated on, but sadly on the C64 it's just another frustrating isometric adventure game. Rounding out this compilation is KGB Super Spy, originally released in 1989. Your assignment is to prevent World War III. Top level scientists in East Germany have developed an incredible new weapon which could tip the balance of terror between East and West, and they want to defect and bring their discovery to the West. However, the communists have sealed the border. There is no escape unless you can land your helicopter amongst the red hordes to snatch the would-be defector. To complete its mission you must collect all the scientists. Follow the flashing arrows at the bottom of the screen to find them. They stand on the ground and wave their right hand at you, and you must land on them to pick them up. You must beware of the poser scientists waving their left hand at you. They're actually East German soldiers. When you've picked up all 6 scientists, you can land at the safe house and complete the level. Your helicopter's fuel will decrease as you fly and also when you're hit by enemies. To refuel, you can land and pick up the jerry cans off the ground or land at the safe house. Other pickups are also available, including ones that increase your firepower, give you an extra life, make you temporarily indestructible or award you extra points. This is one of 2 games published by Codemasters in 1989 that seems, based on the title, to be siding with the Russians, the other one being MiG-29 Soviet fighter. What were the Darling brothers up to back then? Anyway, this is quite clearly a Choplifter clone, but you have to rescue all the scientists in order and reach the safe house to complete the level. If you die at any point, then you must restart the stage from the beginning. There are nice, chunky, cartoonish graphics on display with lots of colour, some smooth horizontal scrolling and simple but functional sound effects. The first level sees you facing an onslaught of respawning enemies whilst trying to locate the scientists, but there are enough power-ups around to allow you to complete it once you've had a few tries. You do need to be careful not to land too quickly or you'll crash, and it's also possible to shoot scientists, so you must be wary of firing while moving, as when you do this, your shots go diagonally towards the floor. This does make it annoying, as you have to either go across the top of the screen, frequently getting hit by enemies, or progress slowly and only shoot when hovering, not moving. This takes some of the fun out of the game and also means you get hit a lot. The second level brings a scenery change and adds a ton of more difficult to destroy enemies, mainly the helicopters that take several shots to kill. There are loads of power-ups available, but you have to backtrack to get the scientists. The level is long and there are too many ways to lose a life and have to restart from the beginning. I couldn't get past the second stage despite several attempts, and it did get boring eventually. I think adding the ability to drop the scientists off at the safe house at any point and have that act as a checkpoint for the level would have improved it, but that would also make it pretty much identical to Choplifter. Having said that, the game is certainly playable, looks good and could provide some fun if you persevere, but it's nothing special. That completes my detailed look at the supposedly super games that make up Quattro Super Hits. There's certainly some variety there, with 3 predominantly arcade style games along with 1 slower paced adventure. Were any of them actually super though? Let's move on to rating each one individually to find out, before giving the compilation an overall score too. First up was Super Stuntman, and conceptually this is quite a good idea, and the variety in level designs does make you want to make progress. It's just a shame the levels and time limits are so short, and it's littered with annoying dead ends and other factors that slow you down. You could get some fun out of this for a while, but once you've learned the level layouts there's not much replayability. I'm scoring this one 5 out of 10. Super Tank was not a very pretty game to look at and the controls take some getting used to, but the mixture of overhead view run and gun and first person Operation Wolf style blasting does mix things up a bit and it is reasonably playable. I'm going to give it a score of 6. Moving on to Superhero, as an isometric view adventure game, this was going to have to be something special to impress me, but it has so many issues that I couldn't really be bothered to even try and get into it. It does look quite good, but that's where the positives end, and I'm giving it 3 out of 10. And finally, KGB Super Spy is an attractive looking Choplifter clone that is just let down a little by the need to pick up every scientist in one go to complete a stage, and the tiresome onslaught of energy sapping enemies. It's still worth a go though, and I'd give this a score of 6. As usual, I'll now move on to the overall compilation ratings, starting with the packaging. I've already reviewed several of these Quattro compilations and they follow a tried and tested format packaging wise. This one's no better or worse than the others really, though the instructions for Superhero could have been better. I'm sticking with the usual score I've given most of them though, which is 7 out of 10. The score for the 4 games averages out at 5 out of 10, and in terms of value for money, well 4 games for £2.99 certainly wouldn't have been sneezed at back then, and even if you take the dismal Superhero out of the equation, you'd easily get a quid's worth of value out of the other 3. I do think the longevity is lacking in these games compared to some of the other Quattro offerings though, so I'm going to score this 7 out of 10. All of which means that the overall compilation rating for Quattro Super Hits comes out at 58%, so not very super at all really. I couldn't find any magazine reviews for this one, so let's move on to the compilation rankings league table, and as you can see that 58% score for Quattro Super Hits has brought it in at 9th place in the budget compilation league table. It's come out of the worst of the 4 Quattro compilations I've reviewed so far, and I think that's absolutely fair. I'll move on to the combined compilation league table now, but I think you probably already knew that it wasn't going to make it onto this one, as the entry requirements now are a ranking of 65% or more. That just about does it for this episode of the Commodore 64 Compilation Comparison, except for me to ask the usual question, what do you think about this compilation and the 4 games contained within it? Do you agree with my ratings? Do you think I was too harsh or was I too generous? Let me know in the comments. Thanks very much to my channel members for nominating this one. It may not have been the best compilation I've reviewed so far, but they've all got to be done at some point. If you're interested in supporting my efforts and becoming a member of the channel, click on the join button below this video for more information. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a like. I'll be back with another C64 compilation review next month. Thanks very much for watching this video, and until the next time, see ya!